o'clock, and in the last hour, notorious Islamist preacher Anjem Choudary has been found guilty of directing a terrorist organisation and encouraging support for it.
Right, well, let's get the latest now with GB News national reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, tell us what's happened.
Well, this is one of the most significant convictions in British counter-terrorism history. Anjem Choudary found not guilty just only of encouraging support for a terrorist organisation, being a member of a terrorist organisation, but also guilty of directing a terrorist organisation. That organisation is Al-Muhajirun. It's been a proscribed organisation since 2010, and he has been found guilty on all three counts of those charges. Found guilty today alongside Khalid Hussein, a Canadian national who was arrested last July after flying into Britain from Canada. Now, Al-Muhajirun, it's been proscribed since 2010, but prosecutors said that it had changed names on regular occasions to avoid detection. During the trial, we heard from prosecutors who detailed some of the names that this group had used, and these charges specifically related to a North American group that Khalid Hussein, his co-defendant, was a member of. It was called the Islamic Thinkers Society. Now, the prosecution said that ITS, the Islamic Thinkers Society, and Al-Muhajirun were one and the same. They were linked organisations. That ITS was one of those cover names used by Al-Muhajirun to avoid the counter-terrorism officials in Britain. Well, the defence said that there wasn't the case, that they were separate organisations, but ITS in New York was intervened, and it was intercepted by undercover officers from the New York Police Department and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Those undercover officers infiltrated online meetings and lectures that Anjem Choudary had delivered from 2022 and also 2023. Now, Anjem Choudary was previously in prison from 2016 to 2018 after encouraging support for ISIS, the Islamic State group, as it was going about its horrific rampage in Iraq and Syria. He was released in 2018, but he had licence conditions until 2021. But it was after that period, when those conditions were released and he went on to deliver these lectures, that these charges were able to be brought about due to that international investigation involving several partners between the UK, the US and Canada. Well, after this verdict delivered today via Woolwich Crown Court, Commander Dominic Murphy from the Metropolitan Police's Counter-Terrorism Command detailed the significance of these verdicts.
We know that Anjem Chowdary's had involvement with individuals that have committed terrorist attacks here in the UK in the past, but also travelled overseas to join ISIS. So actually disrupting Anjem Choudary and of course his group Al-Muhajirun, a prescribed organisation here under the Terrorism Act in the UK, will help us to manage public safety. But of course, you know, we need to keep a watchful eye on others that are involved in radicalisation. So our work won't stop here, but this is nonetheless a significant milestone.
Well, the New York Police Department also said that Anjem Choudary was a shameless and prolific radicaliser. He had been a significant radicaliser of so many terrorists in the past. Senior security officials in Britain have noted that for the vast majority of their careers in counterterrorism, they have been looking at Al-Muhajirun and the impact of Anjem Choudary. And in reaction to these verdicts, we also heard further comments from the NYPD saying that usually it's the foot soldiers who are caught in counter-terrorism operations. Usually it's those who carry out attacks or who are planning them. It's rarely the radicaliser. But with these convictions of Anjem Choudary on 3 counts of encouraging a terrorist organisation, membership of a terror organisation, and most keenly that very rare Section 56 of directing a terrorist organisation, are a clear example of law enforcement being able to intercept and disrupt a radicaliser, a leader and a key organiser of global terrorism.
I mean, Charlie, people have said up till now that he's almost been playing a game of cat and mouse with the police, that people slammed the length of the sentence back in 2016 for being too lenient. Do we imagine that the sentencing for this, now that he's been convicted, will be a long sentence?
Well, we don't have much precedence for this Section 56 conviction of the Terrorism Act. There's only been one previously in recent history. That was in 2008 for a man who was plotting for Al-Qaeda in Britain, said to be the most senior Al-Qaeda operative. We'll have to check his sentence later, but the sentencing for Anjem Choudary is coming in end of this month on July the 30th. And it was well noted during the trial that Anjem Choudary had boasted in prison during his period from 2016 to 2018 that he was seen as one of the key radicalisers in the country. He noted in prison that he had to be kept away from others due to the way that he converted and preached to others. So those conditions and those preferences and understandings will be consistent, I think, with what the state does next with Anjem Choudary at this sentencing on July the 30th.
Well, thank you very much, Charlie. Charlie Peters there, GB News national reporter. That's something that they'll have to bear in mind massively, isn't it? Because it's very likely that someone like Anjem Choudary would wish to radicalise as many people as possible within prison.
Absolutely.
So keeping him as separate as possible, so he can't do that.
And also, I mean, just seeing how he's been obviously convicted before, out again. It's this merry-go-round that we keep seeing. Short sentences clearly just don't work.
Yep. So we'll see what happens with that. The sentencing, as Charlie said, on July the 30th. We'll find out how many years he'll spend behind bars, I imagine. But coming up, we'll be talking to a former chairman of the BMA's GP committee, because Health Secretary Wes Streeter